welcome to Question Time. Tonight, we're in Sheffield. And with me here on the panel, Jack Straw, Foreign and Home Secretary under Tony Blair, Justice Secretary under Gordon Brown. David Davis, who might have been Prime Minister if he hadn't lost the Conservative leadership battle with David Cameron. The Foreign Office Minister, Liberal Democrat Jeremy Brown. The Director of Liberty, Shamish Chakrabarti, once described as the most dangerous woman in Britain by our final panellist, the broadcaster and former Sun columnist John Gaunt, now spokesman for the EU referendum campaign. So, let's have our first question tonight from Aidan Fitzgerald, please.
Do members of the panel believe that there is a likely chance that the constituents of Sheffield Hallam will politically decapitate Nick Clegg at the next election as a result of his U-turn on student fees and refusal of loan to Sheffield Forge Masters?
Right, a long list there. So this is about the politics of... We've talked about student fees many times. John Gaunt, do you think he's going to get his comeuppance at the election?
Well, I'm not surprised not to see him here tonight in Sheffield. I think it's an absolute disgrace what the Lib Dems have done. They are stinking hypocrites because they went round the universities of this great country and signed a pledge in front of these young students. I'm first generation going to university. Myself and my two brothers, we come from a working class background. We couldn't have gone unless we got a grant. We got those grants, we went, and it broadened our horizons. I think probably with the fees at $3,200, it's about right. I can see the argument about students paying something towards their education because a lot of people don't go, but they have to pay for it in their taxes. But putting it up to £9,000 is an absolute disgrace. It will become either two-tier universities like they've got in America, or I think probably what will happen is the same with the $3,200. Everybody will start charging $9,000. Now, we used to say, didn't we, that the Labour government was stinking hypocrites about this because they all went to university on full grants. We can't say this about the coalition government because 19 of them are millionaires. So it won't really affect their children.
But what about
because
their...
don't forget, we are
what
all
about
in
their
this
political future?
Together.
What about... Yeah. Aidan Fitzgerald's question was whether the Liberal Democrats will be wiped out here because of...
Well, look at the latest poll, 9% they've got, haven't they? The Lib Dems are disappearing completely as a political party and as a political force.
All right.
I mean, I want to focus just on the thing about the education. The education is a complete betrayal of our young people and of working class kids. When you go to university, the greatest thing, David, is that you meet people from all different backgrounds. It's a bit like national service, according to my old man, God rest his soul. It's the same as that. You mix and you meet different people and your head explodes with new ideas. They're going to stop working class people going. It's a disgrace. It's a barrier, and it's going to stop people like me and my kids.
I have to stop you.
Wrong.
I do have to stop you there now because I want to bring in. I want to bring in Jeremy Brown, who's our Liberal Democrat tonight on this panel, and of course, like all the other Liberal Democrats, said before the election that they promised not to introduce tuition fees. Jeremy Brown.
Well, on the first real question you asked me, I hope you stick with Nick Clegg. I think you should do. What has been amazing is that in my parents' lifetime, the Lib Dems have never had an opportunity to participate in the government in this country. What people always said to us is it's a wasted vote. You might be able to run the local recycling centre and do nice things on the parish council. Well, you can't take the tough decisions that are needed in government in order to get our country back on its feet after we were left with this colossal deficit which we are having to deal with today. And let me take the issue of tuition fees head on, because that's the underlying main bit. That is the main bit of the question.
Be taken head on.
That's the main bit of the question. No, the question was about Nick Clegg, actually, and about fees. Let me take that
fees and Sheffield Forge Masters.
Take on John's point. I am passionate about young people from all backgrounds, including the poorest backgrounds, having the opportunity to realise their full potential. It's far too reliable a guide to people's prospects in life at the moment in Britain today.
Well, to say the opposite would be a very odd thing to say.
Let me finish the
platitude, that.
No, well, it's not a platitude at all, because that is the big test that we are going to have to meet as a government with this policy. And let me tell you what it does. At the moment, you start repaying your fees at £15,000. Under this policy, it will be £21,000. That is more than the average wage for all adults in my constituency. If you earn less than £21,000, you won't pay a penny.
But you made the pledge that it wouldn't happen.
Well, I will come to it. Secondly...
But don't come to it.
No, I'm answering a serious question.
No, but hang on. You're doing an explanation of a change of policy.
The
question is saying is...
John was talking about poorer people not being able to go to university. The bottom quarter poorest people will pay less under the government's proposals.
So you were wrong to say you wouldn't introduce tuition fees? You were wrong to say it before the election.
I signed a number of commitments during the election campaign, and I supported what was in the Lib Dem manifesto.
But it was a mistake.
I just want to point something out to you.
It was a mistake, was it?
The Lib Dems didn't win the general election. Sorry, listen, amazing news. We didn't win the general election. Okay. We can't implement our whole manifesto. For the first time in my parents' lifetime, we are implementing some of our manifesto,
you know what makes me sick?
Helping
when you talk
with
to a
all
Liberal
of the
Democrat,
in this country.
it's always the Conservatives' fault.
No,
and when you,
when
you talk to Tory, it's because you're in bed with the Lib Dems. You're like a Harry Enfield character.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying. Let me just on this point. I'm not saying that. No party won the general election. No party has a mandate to implement its manifesto in full. We are in government with the Conservative Party. We are working with them on all the policies. Some of our policies are ours, some are predominantly theirs. But we are working together in the national interest. We finished third.
Okay.
We finished third.
All right, enough.
If we had implemented our manifesto, imagine how much grief I'd be getting when we finished third in the election. We are involved in government and we are...
table and by our audience here at will. Louise Murdoch's question, please.
Should prisoners be allowed to vote, especially when some of them have committed heinous crimes?
Should prisoners be allowed the vote, which is what the Prime Minister said is going to happen, it's going to be introduced. David Davis, you start on that.
No, it's a simple answer. They committed a crime. When you go to prison, you give up a number of your civil rights, the most obvious one, your liberty, but also other ones as well. I have to say, I mean, there are many times when I can applaud the actions of the European Court of Human Rights, but this is not one of them. This is actually none of their business. They said in the judgment that one of the reasons they made this decision was because there had been no debate in Parliament. Well, maybe they didn't go back to 1867. Maybe they didn't realise there was a democracy here then, but that's when it was debated, and we made a decision. Now, frankly, if I were the government today, I would take a rather tougher line than they have done. I would actually offer Parliament three options. And so here you are, you can either give prisoners the vote, which appears to be what the ECHR want, or you can give some prisoners the vote, to those who are only sent down for 6 months or a year, something like that, or you can vote to disagree with the ECHR. And then let's see the ECHR overturn the decision of a democratic body like Parliament. That's what I would do. Very simple, say no.
So the Prime Minister... The Prime Minister's wrong to say in the House of Commons, I had no alternative. I grit my teeth, but I have to do it.
He will have been advised that he has to follow this by the government lawyers. But the simple truth is...
But he doesn't, you're saying.
What should have happened, those government lawyers should look much more carefully at what was said in the judgment. It was, they majored very much on this issue of not being a vote in Parliament. Let's give them a vote in Parliament.
I just think David Cameron's been completely spineless. I think he's got the spine of a blancmange when it comes to anything to do with Europe. He could stand up to them and say it's £50 million in fines, in compensation to these criminals who don't deserve the vote. Stand up, man. You know, stand up to Europe. Stand up to the European Court on this particular issue. And when you think about the amount of money, 50 million, well, we're giving £48 million a day, as you know, David, to Europe. Cameron talks a tough game, but when he goes to Europe on any issue, he rolls over and lets them tickle his belly.
Okay. Yes, sir. Up there, man with the beard there. Yes.
Hi, yeah, the more worrying thing that John just referred to, I think, is that I read a quote where the PM said, "There's nothing I can do about it."
Yes.
But we voted for him, we didn't vote for whoever made this decision.
This is from Matt Peters, please. Matt Peters.
Does the new defence treaty between Britain and France signal the beginning of the end for our own independence and sovereignty?
Okay, we saw Sarkozy and David Cameron signing this treaty. which seemed to come out of the blue. I mean, suddenly one day, and then suddenly they were signing 2 treaties and all that stuff. It was all very impressive. I don't think it had been to the House of Commons at this stage. David Davis, is it the beginning of the end of our own independence and sovereignty? Or is it like the one that Chirac signed with Tony Blair, which didn't really come to very...
Well, and Chirac signed one with John Major, if I remember correctly. I mean, this is about sharing some nuclear laboratories. I saw it written up in the newspapers as nuclear test sites, but of course we don't test nuclear weapons anymore. So it's sharing some nuclear laboratories and sharing landing rights on aircraft carriers. So it's hardly the end of our sovereignty. I mean,
and a combined expeditionary force, French and British together.
Well, what do you think is happening in ISAF at the moment in Afghanistan? There are combined operations there, and it won't be the only time we've had combined operations in the Balkans in the past. So
what was all the fuss about? Why all the razzmatazz?
It was a sensible action with an ally. Now, whether it's as big as has been dressed up, I'm not so sure. But it's a sensible action with an ally. And at the end of the day, there are going to be limits, real practical limits to what you can do with a nation which has got very, very good military forces, very, very good soldiers, but who speak a different language. And if I'm in a trench with a lot of soldiers, I want them all to speak my language, full stop. And so there's a real practical limit. And what this is common sense, straightforward, but it's not a massive change in geopolitics.
Gaunt.
I just worry that it was all done very quickly, like you say, and where was the discussion in Parliament? Where's the discussion over this? Yes, we're trying to save money at the moment, but it's a bit like the BBC licence fee negotiation. It normally takes 2 years. They did it in 2 days. I know we've got an economic crunch on here. I do worry that they're moving at a pace that we may all live to regret. And also, as well, speaking to people, you know, who ring into me and write into me about this, soldiers on the ground are very concerned, aren't they, about this joint leadership thing, you know, what you just illustrated, really, by saying in the trenches. And also people are very concerned about whether we end up with an EU army. And there are some of our partners in Europe who quite fancy that, David.
OK. Jack Straw.
I applaud the treaty. I think it's a really good idea. We work in close collaboration with the Americans, who have been our allies in 2 world wars. Why the devil can't we work in close collaboration with the French, who are also our allies in 2 world wars? Let us not forget that. And Sarkozy brought France back into what's called the military structure of NATO, so they stand with us in equal measure. France is the only other country in Europe which has defence forces of a similar scale and size to us, and also a readiness to deploy them, because there's a reluctance in many other EU countries to deploy them. And the other thing that we share with France, we're both very nationalistic. The idea that suddenly the nuclear button for the French nuclear weapons is going to be held in Downing Street, or for the British nuclear weapon is going to be held in the Elysee, is utter nonsense. This is about sensible collaboration.